This is Whale Watching, an inbound marketing show to help you land more whales.
I'm Josh, the HubSpot expert.
And I'm Holly, the niche inbound strategy expert.
We're here at Protocol 80. We're an
Yes,
inbound
we are.
marketing agency located just outside of Bradford, Pennsylvania. We work with manufacturing companies and healthcare tech companies to help them generate more leads, more sales using inbound strategies.
Definitely. And that's pretty much what our show is about. We focus on helping sales, service, and marketing professionals get more tips and close more deals, drive traffic. That's what we're all about here.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And if you missed it, last month we talked about trade shows. Obviously, with 2020 being a funky year for trade shows moving into 2021, what to look out for strategically. So if you missed that, make sure to head over to Bright Talk and you can watch that on demand. And this month,
we're going to talk about habits.
yeah, specific to sales and marketing.
Yeah, not just general habits.
But if you need a reminder, go brush your teeth.
That's a good habit.
Yeah. All right, you want to get into it?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I've prepared some questions for you.
And as a reminder, or if you haven't seen the show before, we do not know what each other's questions are. So our answers may be good or bad.
Or bad. I don't know that we've ever had any bad answers.
No, I think pretty much everything we say is accurate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've never been wrong.
I agree.
That's what our clients say. All right. Seriously, we need to get into this. I have a question for you.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay. So my questions are kind of specific to the sales environment, how things have changed, habits in that regard. So with that context, what are your top tips for staying in good habits and not falling into bad habits as it pertains to sales?
That's a tough question.
We can start with a different one if that's too
No,
much of a
it's
hardball.
okay. I think that there's just a lot of variables there. I think it kind of depends on the habit.
Okay.
I think that let's take prospecting, for example. Prospecting, I think, is one of those sales habits that a lot of people picked up during the pandemic when they were working from home for a few reasons. Maybe they had the time because sales reps weren't traveling as much, so they were behind their computer, gave them more time to reach out and do some of those sales activities. I think that it also comes down to the fact that they needed leads. They weren't going to trade shows. They weren't doing whatever else their traditional ways of generating those leads. So they were almost forced to do it. So I think in those instances, something like prospecting, you have to be diligent about doing it, whether that's setting time on your calendar and that time is untouchable, and every day at 9 a.m. is your prospecting time. Doing things that support maintaining that behavior or the habit, I think is one of those things that's super beneficial. And one of the other things that I think will help sales reps maintain those habits. Our guest this month we'll talk a little bit more on, but it's about changing the environment or making the environment suitable to whatever that behavior, that sales behavior you're looking for. So again, let's take calling, right? Some sales reps are better at calling than others. Some don't do it because maybe the environment's noisy, but they were calling more when they were working from home because it was just them and their kids or their dog, right? So by changing that environment, maybe it's closing your office door and putting a sign on the outside that says, recording in progress or whatever it is. Phone calling.
Would you recommend bringing your dog in as well?
If you have a quiet dog that would fit in a satchel, you can bring it in.
Why a satchel?
It's probably small.
Gotcha.
So I guess to circle back, TLDR, it depends on what that behavior, that habit is that you're looking for, but finding something that allows you to be able to maintain and continue that habit on an ongoing basis.
Sounds like a lot of prioritization and also just assertion that those things are important, right? Like if you have your manager or other people on your team breathing down your neck and you're not, saying, no, I need to protect this time because I need to get this thing done, then that would probably be a challenge.
Yeah. I think that also brings up a good point with your sales manager, your director, or VP, or whatever that may be. One of those other things that supports habits is accountability. So if you are a sales rep versus a sales director, you should be looking for that accountability from whoever it is that you're answering to. And if you are a sales manager or director, some reps or most reps feed off of that accountability or need that accountability to be able to maintain those types of sales activities.
Yeah. That kind of, in terms of accountability, that kind of segues into my next question about what tools, technology, resources do you think are crucial for, sales professionals to stay in good habits? Like, it's totally unrealistic to expect any salesperson in 2021 to thrive, to get into good habits, to really kind of get into their groove without these types of things.
I think my number one would be a CRM that would allow you to log activity. Because when you are logging the activity, it's something that's there, it gets reported, it gets measured, it gets looked at. You're accountable to yourself, you're accountable to someone else. So my number one piece of advice there is, not necessarily record, but log the fact that you had a phone call, that you had a meeting, that you had a touch base, whatever that may be, and then build reports and dashboards up front. So, each month or each week when you go into your sales meetings, you can look at whatever those activities are, those habits are that you're trying to look for. And one of the other things that you even may want to track, and we've talked about this before, would be like your no's, because it might take, a ton of no's before you get to the yes. So if you are getting those no's, it means you're also performing whatever those activities are, whether it's quoting something, giving demos, or whatever that may be.
And to your point of habits, if you're maybe a salesperson who isn't as comfortable calling, you're never going to be comfortable unless you're making those calls and racking up those no's and preparing yourself for when you are in the face of someone who could be a yes.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
It's a good mindset to be in. I mean, it sucks to get a no.
Yeah.
But, something as a sales rep that you learn to live with.
Right. Definitely. So, you on this show, and to many, are a model of great sales behavior. You have awesome tips. But I'd like to level with you. What are some bad habits, sales habits, that you found yourself maybe falling back into post-pandemic, that you either said you wouldn't or you shouldn't be doing, and how do you find yourself trying to work through those?
Yeah. There's one that really comes to mind for me. There's a community that I've been very involved with, the HubSpot community. And for me, it's a great source of leads. Not only am I getting leads that we could potentially close that are qualified, but I'm also helping people at the same time, which is, an added benefit.
Of course.
During the pandemic, there were working from home or working from the office when it was just us two at the office. Just less distractions. So there was more time that I could spend doing that. I knew that each day I wanted to spend, 30 minutes, an hour on that. And I found that since being back at the office and, just other things, whatever they may be, just different conversations, different meetings, things that need done in the actual, physical location, I found myself slipping and not spending as much time as I want there.
Right.
So you could correlate that to anything.
Right.
But that's definitely one of the habits that I would like to fall back into is making sure that I, again, set time aside and maybe close my door and put a bright red light on the outside that spins that shows people that they should not bother me at that time.
That's a good idea. We've got Mava, our graphic designer and also videographer behind the camera here. Maybe she could make you up a cute little, sign. Maybe it's you with a phone. It's don't come in, calling in progress.
What I would request is you might be too young for Full House.
What? How young do you think I am? That was like the pinnacle of...
But when they were recording downstairs in the basement, there was the thing at the top of the stairs, so everyone knew that they were recording downstairs in the basement.
So we need to build you a staircase.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds fair. I think we could maybe get on that. We're still under construction, so...
True.
Might be in the budget.
Is that your last question?
I have one more question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that this is actually a topic that you were selected to speak on at Inbound this year, so congratulations.
Thanks.
Big congratulations to you for being
Very
a selected
excited.
speaker. Yeah, and actually, Josh shares a website page with Oprah now. as one of the speakers at Inbound.
I'm surprised they didn't put me right next to her, but
Me too. Or even, before her.
or even in the same vicinity.
Yeah, even Photoshop you guys together maybe.
That's
They
possible.
had options.
I mean, we have a lot of photos of Oprah and I together already.
Right.
But those are just, more like having fun and doing stuff.
Yeah, you're right. We
More
really want to
casual.
show you guys as like real
Professional.
speakers. Yeah, of course. Anyway, so you are going to be giving your session on habits and making sure your sales reps don't fall into bad habits. So that'll kind of be a little bit of a deeper dive into what we're talking about today. What do you think people can look forward to in that presentation? What are some reasons people might want to make sure that they stop by your room, your breakout room?
My breakout room virtually.
Right, your virtual breakout room.
My virtual breakout room. I think, the number one thing to look at is what I'm hoping to share. Really applies to anything. It applies to sales habits specifically, and I'm going to tie back as much as I can, but whether you are a doer or a manager, what I'm covering should be helpful and beneficial to understand how to either be that person that enables your team to follow whatever behaviors you want them to, or yourself. And then the other thing to consider is, maybe you're not a sales rep. Maybe you're in another role. You should be able to take that and translate it into whatever it is professionally or personally.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, everyone, you should definitely, check out Josh's talk at Inbound, register for this year's Inbound because I think it's going to be great.
Inbound.com.
Inbound.com.
Cool.
All right, that's all I had for you.
All right, so I have some questions for you.
Okay.
When I think about the sales environment and, sales habits and activities, it's standard. There's procedures, there's processes that you do. I'm interested to hear about what you would consider some marketing-based habits. Like, what are those things that people should do more frequently as a recurring or a process or a habit?
Definitely. I think something that's crucial, and the more you can do it, the better, like, period. And whatever more looks like to you, I think is great, but you really want to make sure you're doing it frequently, and that is tracking the behavior of your leads that are coming into your website and then pivoting your activities accordingly. So not just like one lead comes in, they saw this page, now that's the only thing you're writing about, but really over time, having some aggregate data about, okay, these 5 contacts turned into SQLs, what are they looking at? How are they behaving? How do we replicate that experience? How do we make content helpful to them? And that's something, daily might be a little bit of overkill, but that's something I do weekly for our clients so that, on a monthly, on a quarterly basis, I have this nice, set of data that I can look at and make decisions for our next content map. And I think that that's something that isn't considered enough sometimes in the inbound space, in the strategic space, in terms of like, it's great that your blogs have traffic. It's great that things are converting. But what's actually bringing the conversations to sales? What's actually affecting the bottom line? And making sure you know what that is. You are in that data all the time and replicating that. And that is, I think, to the conversation of habits and routine. That's one of those things that I'll even admit it. Because it's something I sometimes do on a weekly basis, it's one of the first things that gets knocked off if we're having a crazy day, a lot of requests come in. But it's really important to make sure that that's prioritized, and just because it happens weekly or on a regular cadence, it's just as important. It has to happen. So I think that's an example of that for sure.
Perfect. And is it difficult to make sure some of those smaller things or recurring things don't get deprioritized?
I think so, because I think inbound is such a long game and there are so many moving parts. There's so many channels, there's so many things that are happening all at once that I think sometimes the forest gets lost for the trees, or the tree gets lost for the forest.
Either way.
Either way. You lose sight of the big picture because you're focused on the little things. So I think, if something really exciting is happening, if a manufacturing company just invested in a new machine or something like that, like all of a sudden all the focus goes to that, but that might not necessarily be evergreen. That might not be something that's worth the investment into channeling all of your time and energy into, if it's not something that's going to continue to produce good leads year over year. So I think because there's so many things moving and so many exciting things moving, some of the more boring, humdrum things can sometimes get lost in translation because it doesn't immediately perform. There isn't an immediate payoff, but it's the foundations of what you're doing. It's so important.
I get that.
Yeah.
My next question is, as a marketer, and someone that is also a consumer and being marketed to, you probably experienced the uptick in digital marketing to you. What are some of the habits, or maybe habits, that would tie back to like what you've seen? Like, what are some of the things that you've experienced over the last 18 months that you're like, gosh, this marketer on the other end is just doing this because of whatever?
Ooh.
You could also say everyone is a great marketer and I love everything they're
No,
doing.
not everyone's a great marketer. I think this is going to be roundabout, but I think it'll get at the heart of what you're asking about. I think marketing is at its best when the marketer is taking the time to segment, personalize, customize. That's the marketing that works. That's the marketing that cuts through the noise. Those are the emails that get opened when it feels like it's a marketing email, but it's something you're interested in. And that, again, going back, that can be based on the pages you've seen on a website. That could be based on your past purchases, the industry you're in. Marketing is at its worst when it's just a total fire hose to everyone in the world. Metrics are lower, conversions are lower. I think when I think of things that have worked on me personally in the B2C space and worked on our clients in the B2B space, in its most simplest form, that's when we're being extremely tactical and taking the time to segment and target based on interest. That's what cuts through the noise, right? Because like I think of Bath and Body Works, or I think of this company I love called For You Flowers, and they're logging data and they're tailoring their emails they're sending to me, and I open them. And I'm always buying from both of those companies. And I think I talked about this on a very first episode, but like For You Flowers will literally be like, hey, you sent your Grammy flowers for her birthday last year. It's coming up again. Like, how am I going to ignore that? You know what I mean? Now I'm the person who deleted an email about my Grammy. So I think what cuts through the noise, what works, is that making sure you're focusing on segmenting and personalization.
Are you that type of person?
Who would delete an email about my Grammy?
Maybe even from your Grammy.
She doesn't email me. She doesn't know how.
Fair.
I have a funny story that our editor may cut later. But my Grammy thinks she can technology. We got her an iPad for Christmas so she could text us. And the first text she ever sent me said, "Hi, ho." Full send.
That's funny.
And I love her to death. But so she won't be sending me emails anytime soon. But to that point, tugging at my heartstrings, it's something personal. I'm going to open that versus just roses are on sale. That doesn't mean anything to me.
And I think that brings up a good point about the fire hose approach. When we were entering into March, April, May 2020, and everyone was like, what are we going to do? WTF? Everyone kind of diverted to that. Like, we just have to do whatever we can possibly do to try to do something. And it became that fire hose approach.
Which is fine. Like, if you want to be the people who are sending a ton of marketing emails, who are sending a ton of social, who are just like blasting things out, I'm not going to say it's never going to work, but you're probably not going to see the performance as quickly or as high quality as people who are really taking their time and segmenting, specifically in social, things like that. It's not like it'll never work. It's just you're going to kind of kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince.
Yeah. Cool. I have one more question.
Okay.
And this ties to our conversations in the past about sales and marketing alignment. As a marketer, what are habits that you wish that salespeople would have to support sales and marketing alignment?
I'm so ready for this one. This is like going to be a bench sesh for me, very cathartic. I wish salespeople would do better at marking where leads are, how they feel about them, leaving notes. Because as I mentioned before, something that's incredibly crucial to a marketer is knowing what was quality and replicating that for the sales team. And it's impossible for marketers to know what's working if you're not telling us who worked. If you're not telling us this person became a deal, or, this person was, closed lost because XYZ. Well, how do we create content to address that, to educate? So either that person doesn't come through to begin with, or they feel more confident in their buying power, in their understanding of how the companies are going to work together before they reach sales. We can't do that if everything in the CRM, if everything in whatever database is just, all we know is it came in and then we never hear anything again. I have no idea how to discern and how to figure out what's what. So I think that is one of the big things where, again, I think that's something that periodically organizations will gain a lot of momentum behind in terms of being like, yes, we're going to do this. And marketers are like, yay, we're finally collaborating. And that's the first thing to fall off when sales gets busy, because it's great. They're making the calls, they're closing the deals, they're having these conversations and forgetting, about kind of the people who are trying to boost them up and support them and get more conversations happening. Right. That's kind of my biggest.
That's a great answer.
Thank
so
you.
As a sales rep myself, if you were in charge of the P80 marketing, our marketing, would you want me to mention you on every single note, or make it more of a, I'm changing the lead status, I'm changing something else, what's most ideal for you?
I think using the technology at your fingertips, so changing the lead status, and certainly not necessarily tagging on every note, but if something notable happens, right? Like, oh, this person mentioned that they knew that we were experts in da-da-da. Like, that's a nugget, that's helpful, we can take that and use that. And ultimately, as a salesperson, you should be taking notes on calls anyway. And if I feel so inclined as a marketer to go in, we have these shared tools, we're both using them together, I'm going through maybe the deals that are open and I might go through their activity. I can see your notes there as well. You don't necessarily need to tag me every time, but we're working together intuitively using the tools at our fingertips to kind of, we don't even need to have a conversation. Yeah. I should be able to get that from data, from changing the lead status, from your call notes, that kind of thing.
Cool. Well, that was all my questions. Before we move into our next segment here of the show, I just want to mention that you are wearing Steelers colors. Black attire and yellow.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And you're a Steelers fan.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to move into our interview. Each month we try to interview a practitioner, someone that's not an advisor or an agency person.
Yep.
This month we have Gavin Brauer, who is COO and founder at KindHuman Bicycles.
Cool. That's very exciting. I'm super excited to talk to Gavin, so let's roll the tape.
So we'd like to welcome our guest, my good friend Gavin Brauer of KindHuman Bicycles. I'll let him introduce himself a little bit more as well, but we're super excited to talk to you about behaviors and habits, specifically as it relates to sales and marketing. So welcome, Gavin.
Thanks, Josh. It's a pleasure to be here.
Can you give us a quick intro of yourself, both with KindHuman and as a performance coach?
Yeah, so I started KindHuman with three friends, there were three of us. Started KindHuman about 8 years ago, and our desire was to build a global bike brand. And we've started in Toronto. We have a store here, and we've been selling online since day one. And what's interesting is the name KindHuman. When we first started, people thought, why would you put that on a performance bike? And now it's kind of come full circle where people come in and they're like, yeah, I'm out for a ride, and everybody's telling me, oh, such a cool bike, and all that kind of stuff. So it's really cool seeing that evolution of trying to do something different and eventually other people coming along and joining the party. Yeah. From performance coaching side, that really, it was a passion project for me. I did my undergrad in kinesiology and psychology. And as the company evolved, we were looking for more ways to help people in their life beyond just riding. And what we note about our customers is most of our customers ride their bike because they're looking for escape, or they're looking to improve their health, or something that ultimately comes back to well-being. And with my background, I saw an opportunity where I could help people beyond only the product. And so that's why I started offering the coaching services.
Awesome. Great intro. Holly, did you want to give Gavin a quick high-level overview of what our show this month is about?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking all about habits. So all about kind of some bad habits that we've noticed people kind of pick up through 2020, or even were practicing before 2020, before the pandemic hit, and how kind of the pandemic could impact us in a positive way in terms of not falling back into old bad habits and maybe some of the lessons that taught us. So we're really kind of just focusing on getting in a good mind state now that we're kind of evolving back into, I hate saying the new normal because everyone, like, it's such like a, oh my God, but really and truly kind of the new normal professionally, personally. So we spoke about different sales and marketing tips, but as well as kind of getting yourself in the right zone to kind of be the best you can be going forward.
Okay.
And Gavin, you and I talked a couple weeks ago about this, and you were some big inspiration for my upcoming presentation at Inbound. And I thought what you had to share was valuable. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on not just, I guess, sales reps and marketers, but just in general, how do people either pick up a good habit or potentially get rid or avoid a bad habit?
Okay, so before we get into like how do you form the habit, I think what's important is what Holly was saying about people going back to the office and the quote unquote new normal, or going back to more the way things were. And how do we either avoid picking up the old bad habits, or how do we keep the good habits that we picked up? And the important thing around that is context. And so what the scientific research has found over the years is when people go back into the same environment, they pick up the same behavior from before they were removed. So the example of that is there was some research done on like Vietnam vets, where in Vietnam, heroin use was very high. And when vets came back, some people continued using, some people just completely stopped. And what they found was that the people who were continuing to hang out with the people they used with in Vietnam, they continued using. The people who went back to a different social circle stopped using. Same thing for like people who go into rehab. So people go into rehab for these extremely addictive drugs. People who go back to their old environment and start hanging out with the people they used to use with, they relapse. The people who start hanging out with new people who are a completely different context, they're not drawn back into the usage. So as we're going back into the workforce, I think what we'll find is if we're coming back to the same environment that we had before, it's highly likely your behavior patterns will revert back to what were before. So if you find that happening and there are things that you don't like are coming back up, give yourself a little bit of grace and understand that that is extremely normal. And it's largely an automatic process that is happening to you. You are not causing it to happen. Same thing if you want to continue your good habits that you had when you were working at home, and you're now going back to an office environment, pay extra attention to your environment has just changed. So maintaining some of those habits are going to be harder, and you're likely going to have to take more conscious effort to redevelop those good habits and keep them going.
Wow. That was like amazing. I have so many questions, but Josh, do you have any follow-ups before I cut in?
No, I'm interested to hear your questions, and I can see myself as a salesperson just when that environment changed, and some of the habits that I did pick up, I haven't been able to stick with. So I definitely want to take to heart. I have to change something, whether it's my environment or something else. So Holly, I'm very interested to hear your questions.
Yeah, I think one of the first questions that I have, just because I'm so curious, and you don't have to answer this one, we can totally cut it out if you don't want to, but do you have an example of a habit maybe that you picked up during the pandemic and then were able to stick with or, drop, either whether it was good or bad, and how did you do so? I'm curious because something that I'm wondering is like, is it enough just to be conscious of this phenomenon happening to be able to course correct yourself? Or, are there more steps that need to be taken? So I'm just interested to hear an example from you of how you've kind of navigated that process.
So where I would start is with your comment around, do you have to be conscious? And I think that's really important, because if we look at what a habit is, really the difference between a habit and any other behavior is the habit is done on autopilot. It's an automatic response to a stimulus. So a great example of that to show us how much of our life can be controlled by automatic behavior is if you've ever been driving home from work and you get home and you're like, how did I get here? I was daydreaming the whole time. I don't remember making any of the turns. I was in autopilot.
Yeah.
And that is our habit system in work. It's a very similar system that's going on there. So so much of our life is controlled by being on autopilot. By improving our autopilot, increasing our AI, for somewhat of an analogy, we end up getting better behavior. So now what we're doing is, the first step is being conscious of your behavior and helping yourself to go from conscious behavior to better automatic behaviors. And so what's happening is your automatic behaviors are controlling our lives. By improving our automatic behaviors, we can continue to run on autopilot, which is an amazing benefit that we have as humans. Like, just imagine how horrible life would be if you had to make every little minute decision at a conscious level. Like, that would be so overwhelming. So if we increase our habits, we're upgrading our autopilot. It's like, think about a self-driving car. Do you want to crash, or do you want to get there safely?
Right.
Improve your habits to get there safely.
Wow.
When we talked the other day, we were talking about a salesperson, and one of those things that they have to overcome, or they have to understand, is that they're going to get a bunch of no's, and in order to get the yes, they have to have those no's. Can you touch on that a little bit?
From what perspective?
From the perspective of being rewarded or making that activity, even though it's a no, still a positive feeling.
Okay.
As to be able to keep doing it, because if it is.
So the number one thing that causes habits to stick is a feeling of a positive emotion immediately after the behavior. And I'm going to distinguish between a positive emotion and a reward. So the problem with a reward to create the habit is there's too much of a time lag between getting the reward and doing the behavior. You need that instant positive emotion after the behavior. So if you want to get better at making cold calls and pushing through those no's, is step one, reframe a no. So there are a lot of successful people, what they do is they say, I know that I need 100 no's to get the one yes. So they've reframed the no as it's a stepping stone to their yes. Mm-hmm. So they're looking at it and saying, it's not rejection. Thank you for the no. You just got me one step closer to my yes. So now you've reframed it as you get your no. You've able to reframe it in a way that it's now a positive thing because it's gotten you closer to your goal. Now what you need to do is you get the no. Immediately after you get the no, you got to do something that makes you feel a sense of what BJ Fogg, one of the leaders on habit formation in the world, he calls it a sense of shine. So anything that makes you feel a positive emotion. So you get the no, do something immediately to get that sense of shine. That could be, some people like to do an internal monologue where they say something positive themselves, like in your head, yes, Gavin, good job, Gavin. Nice, you did it. Like, you can do that silently inside your head. You can imagine yourself that, like, if you have a sport that you love, imagine yourself that you just scored the goal or got the touchdown or won the bike race. You can do that in your own head. If you want to take it to the next level, do that same thing and express it outside. And so you can express it by verbalizing it, so saying it out loud. You can also do it with a physical movement. So for example, like, you just want to race, you're lifting your arms. So you could do, if you're the type of person who just wants to do the body movement, you can get a no. You don't have to say anything. You could also do it, yes. So it's the more you engage with that positive emotion, the quicker the habit will form. Which a lot of people say, how many days does it take to form a habit? 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever. It's not about days. It's about the feeling of positive emotion immediately after the behavior. And for a lot of us, we've learned in a system that we avoid that sense of positive emotion, and celebration is the hardest thing. And so the advice I give all my clients is continue to celebrate the small stuff, no matter how good you get. So for example, one no, celebrate that. If you're trying to improve your fitness and you're doing push-ups, one push-up, celebrate the one push-up. Even if you can do 100 push-ups in a row, continue to celebrate the one push-up.
I think that's super valuable information for both a new sales rep or maybe someone that's been doing this for 20, 30 years.
Yeah. So as a sales rep, either like when I first started practicing my habits using the tiny habit method, which is what BJ Fogg created, and what I've been trained in. When I started, I was celebrating the big behavior and things weren't sticking. So one of the great examples in his book, Tiny Habits, is about how to start flossing your teeth every day. And the tiny habit recipe is, after I brush my teeth, I will floss one tooth and celebrate. So when I first started, I would floss my whole mouth and then celebrate. And every night I would come in and try to do this again, and it was still very much a conscious behavior. And then I was coached and I was told, you got to celebrate the tiny habit, the tiny behavior. So I started flossing one tooth and then doing my celebration in the mirror. And very, very quickly, that habit became automatic. So always remember, you celebrate after the one tooth. Don't wait for the whole mouth to celebrate, because it won't work if you're celebrating after the big behavior. And to show you how powerful this is, so I'm one of those people who I've always wanted to floss, but every year, twice a year, I go to the dentist and I floss one day the day of the appointment, and maybe a week after. That has been my behavior my entire life until Tiny Habits.
Wow.
I now floss every single day. And since I started this, there have been 2 days that I haven't flossed. And those 2 days were the day that I broke my elbow and the day after. And I remember, like, the day I broke my elbow, I was like, oh, I should floss now, but I'm not even, like, I got a broken elbow. How am I going to do this? The next day, same thing happened. I should floss. It was just this automatic thing that came up inside of me. And I'm like, I got a broken elbow. Third day, same thing happened, but this time my brain said, well, how can I get the same outcome with a different tool? And I'm like, I got these picks in that my dentist gave me the last time I was there that I don't use because I'm such a good flosser now. I can do that with one hand. And I started doing that with one hand until my elbow was healed enough to floss again. and I've continued to floss every single day since.
Wow. That's incredible advice. Powerful stuff.
Holly, I know we don't have a whole lot of time for this interview. Do you have any other questions for Gavin or comments, thoughts?
I really need to process. I feel like that's incredibly helpful. And I think there's a lot of really great takeaways for marketers in there as well, in terms of very similar to like celebrating the no's on the sales side of things. Another example of that would be like conversions on the marketing side of things, form submissions. Like not every conversion we get, not every person who lands on the website is going to be that home run for our clients, but at the same time, getting someone there to begin with is nothing short of a small miracle. And so it should be celebrated every time we get a form submission. And like you said, eventually that will become someone who is valuable. So I think that was a good reminder for me personally, but also I think awesome for our audience. So thank you very much for all of that excellent info, because I'm going to be processing that for a couple days for sure.
You're very welcome. One thing I can leave you with is hitting on what you just spoke about, which is lowering the bar.
Mm-hmm.
In our culture, we have this bar up here and it's got to stay here. If anything, we're trying to push the bar up.
Yeah.
That is great sometimes, but if we're trying to improve our skill, it creates a problem. We need to progress at the right level and the right speed. So by lowering our bar, what that helps us do is hit the behaviors that we're ready to hit now. So an example of this is a while ago, I wanted to create the habit that every time I left my house, I would take my water bottle with me. And when I started doing this, like the habit wasn't sticking. I'd get in the car and I'd be like, forgot the bottle again. Next day, the habit same thing happened. Then I realized, I'm like, okay, you're a tiny habits coach. You can do better than this. And I realized that my bar was too high. I was getting angry with myself because I forgot my water bottle, which seemed like a super easy thing to do, but was really hard for me. So the next day I forgot my water bottle. I celebrated. And I celebrated the fact that I remembered that I wanted to bring it. So it was the remembering. So you could say I lowered my bar as opposed to the intended behavior being to actually bring the bottle. I changed it to I celebrated the fact that I remembered. That was easier to do. All of a sudden, next day, bring my water bottle. Now, like 95% of the time I leave my house, I'll take my water bottle if I'm driving somewhere. And the only change was I celebrated the fact that I remembered instead of beating myself up.
Wow.
So same thing when it comes to your marketing, sales and marketing activities. Celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. You'll get the better behavior.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's a beautiful note to end on. And that's Josh, of course, you have more questions, but
no, I just want to leave the viewers, if they want to get in touch with Gavin, either about KindHuman Bicycles or about performance coaching, what's the best way to get in touch with you, Gavin?
So you can email me, gavin@kindhuman.cc. CC stands for Cycling Company. You can visit our website, kindhuman.cc. You can find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
However, lots of ways to find me.
We'll leave those links in the video notes as well.
Yep.
Awesome.
Well, thanks again, Gavin. Really appreciate it. I think that people are going to walk away with some valuable information.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's really a pleasure talking to you guys.
So thanks again to Gavin for joining us. I think he had some really great insight, and I'm super happy we got to talk to him for this episode.
I agree.
Yeah. All right, so it's time to move into our closing thoughts. Sales pun.
Yes.
So if everyone kind of tuned out for this episode, what's one thing they should know about habits in the sales world? My stomach just growled.
Yeah, I would say that my biggest takeaway or recommendation is to find something that works for you. I'm not going to be able to tell you today, exactly what's going to fit for everyone's to maintain those habits. But if you're not able to do it today, change something. Change your environment, change something so that you can always be doing those habits that you would consider a good habit as it relates to sales or marketing.
That would be a good acronym. A, B, D, G, H,
That's
A,
not a good acronym.
R, S, A, M. Always be doing good habits as it relates to sales and marketing.
Yeah, that's a terrible acronym, but
My
Okay.
opinion. Thank you guys for tuning in to Whale Watching, and we'll
see
see you next time.